Welcome, everybody, to this awesome event that we are doing. It's Hail to the King, baby. We're doing a 70-year retrospective on all of the Godzilla films, and we cannot wait to get into it. I am going to have some great guests along the way. Each week, we're going to be talking about 2 to 3 films, depending, because there's a lot of them, and they all break up in different ways. We're starting with the Showa era, and I am so excited to get into it. So if you guys don't know, there are different eras of Godzilla. The Showa era spans from 1954 to 1975, and the name comes from, as we know him, the Emperor Hirohito, Emperor Showa over in Japan. And so he reigned during that time, and that is why they call him the Showa era. We're going to talk about the first 3 movies on this first episode, and that is 1954's Godzilla, 1955's Godzilla Raids Again, and then the Americanization of the first Godzilla film with many things added and things changed. And we're going to talk about all of them. So we're going to get into it. I have great guests tonight. My guests tonight are Trevor. You know him well from Ambassador Radio. He's been on the show. This is a Snobs film history show as it is. So I'm super excited to have him on to talk about this in depth. We also have from Horror with Sir Sturdy podcast, Sir Sturdy himself, the man knows his horror. He's getting into Godzilla. He's really going to attack this from the perspective of things he hasn't seen and just kind of getting into the franchise and what he knows about it. I'm super excited for all the different outlooks on what's going on and more guests to join in along the way. But this is like 16 weeks, so make sure to strap in, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and hit that bell because you're going to want to know when more episodes of this and others come out as well. So let's get started. All right, guys, so we are here. We're going to be talking about the first Godzilla film from 1954. This is the one that kicked off the 15-film run of the Showa era. It was directed by Ishiro Honda, which Trevor can definitely fix these Japanese names after I'm done. It was originally, the idea was for a giant octopus, but they wanted something to be that looked a little more fierce, so they went with a dinosaur-like creature. They thought it would represent nuclear war better. The principal photography went on for 51 days with the special effects photography, also known as suitmation, which was coined after this. And that was a man in a suit who was working with models. So they called it suitmation. And that was 71 days of shooting. It premiered in Japan on October 27th, 1954, and is just one of my absolute favorite films of all time, and I'm so excited to talk about it. Guys, the first Godzilla film. I would love to know, Sturdy, is this your first watch of the Japanese version?
As far as I know, this is my first watch of this film. Yes. I have a very, very brief encounter with Godzilla. I would watch it here and there back in the day when it would come on TV. I don't know if it came on Nick at Night or not, but one of those late night channels where there's like nothing to watch, and you're just flipping through channels and black and white. For whatever reason, since childhood, I've always enjoyed black and white, like just from memory, not this, but this a little bit, but more so like Bewitched and all those shows.
Yeah.
And seeing this in black and white, I was like, oh, this is so refreshing. For whatever reason, it's just always it's always a comfort. It's not my favorite type of film, but it's just always a comfort. It's almost like in a weird way, I guess it's almost like reading a book. It's almost like reading a book. It's just nice and calm, and like reading a book without pictures and all that. You know what I mean? And then with the other movies, it's like you have all the colors and everything and the loudness from it. But with this, it's more kind of calm and just, it was enjoyable though. It was enjoyable first watch. It was definitely a slower thing than I thought Godzilla would be. Like I always thought Godzilla was like this just big, not necessarily killing machine, but just throughout the film. Because again, I haven't really watched it, and the bits and pieces that I do see, or like the clips you do see, it's Godzilla doing something.
Now, and I love your take on that because and if you don't mind, Trevor, I'm gonna go next because we can clearly see, for anybody watching, you know a lot about Godzilla, and I have so many
I'm a
questions
geek.
for you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. This is my now second favorite. I'm not going to name my first. This is my second favorite Godzilla film. I was exposed to Godzilla pretty early on, not this film. I was exposed to early Showa era, a lot of the Versus movies and things like that, which I think is really how Godzilla is seen and popularized in people's minds, is him fighting other monsters. Because even watching this, I had seen this, I think I was about high school when I saw this one, and I was really into filmmaking and stuff, and I thought it would be best to go back and see the original. I loved it. I've seen it dozens of times since. It's a joy to watch. I love the drama of the tale, it being an allegory for nuclear war from the people who really experienced it. I just think it's so poignant and lovely, and it's a beautiful love story. And I think this
It's a
is
story of sacrifice.
yeah. Oh, yeah. But I do love the love story aspect of it.
Which
I
is
mean,
part of the love story.
oh,
Actually.
absolutely. And then the
Yeah.
characters and actually, I want to go to now. Let's go to you because I want to hear your feelings, Trevor, on this movie and more like that from it, like your takeaways.
Well, let me kind of try to remember my first tango with Godzilla. And I think it was the remake or the reimagining with Raymond Burr. And I believe it was probably on a Sunday, a matinee on some terrestrial network that just showed monster movies. And I think that was my first time. And then, of course, I wanted to see all the other Godzilla movies, and I get out the TV guide and like, oh yeah, whatever. But it wasn't until the DVD era that I got a chance to see the original Japanese version. There might have been one before, but the one that I remember the most was there was a set of DVDs by Classics Media. And that was the first U.S. release that, if it was available, included both the Japanese and the U.S. cuts of the film. I was completely blown away once I saw the Japanese version. We're going to talk about each one, and I think each one is very important. But the first film, if you do your research in Japanese critical film, Godzilla is on many Japanese critics' top 20, top 10 list of all time. I mean, this was the most expensive film in Japanese history at that point. It is a classic film that, people, freaked out a little bit when Criterion released it. And when we get to the remake or the reimagining, there's actually a weird connection, so remind me. But no, it's just a beautiful film.
And I think that's where, when I was talking about the love story aspect of it, the love triangle between the doctor and I can't think of anybody's name at the moment, but I'm so excited to talk about this. So when that's happening, I think that's one thing that really attracted me to the story, because it is so different, having known Godzilla as this force of oh, he's going to come in and fight the monsters. And then to see this, especially from a filmmaking standpoint, hearing how different it was. And I had seen the Raymond Burr version earlier in life. And I remember kind of being I think I'm glad it did, because seeing that and then finding out there was a different version of the film really, as a film fan, pushed me to, I need to see it. So I'm kind of glad that awareness, which is what it was for, kind of built, me to get into this even more and learn about it. Now, when it comes to the first Godzilla film, why do you think in just even between the first, and I do want to kind of touch down on the first film and the Raymond Burr Americanization. I do want to talk about your connection, but I want to ask this. Why do you think most of the story needed to be cut? Was it to make room for Raymond Burr? Because I feel like a lot of it was shaved off, the Japanese story side of it.
Well, actually, a lot of it was changed due to the fact that it was just being marketed to a new audience that was not going to we're not going to be able to sympathize or empathize in the way that Inoshiro Honda wanted audiences to empathize with the first film. It was actually a stroke of genius, and we'll talk later. But to retell Godzilla through the eyes of an American, that really softened the film for anybody that might pick up on the fact that, America does not come out, the United States does not come out pretty in the first film.
Yeah.
And Sturdy, let me ask you about that and your first time, with watching both of them. What were the differences in terms of that softness that you took away that Trevor's talking?
The biggest thing for me, I would say, I didn't like with the American version. I didn't like the voiceover. I didn't like the narration through it. I feel like it takes away from the story. It takes away from the feel of the story, because you have this guy that's not even a part of that culture telling this story and kind of just making it like it's him. I feel like he's taking away from kind of making it like it's his story instead of their story. I'm not saying someone else can't tell the story, but just the way it was portrayed, in my opinion, was too like Americanized for me. Like it was like, okay, we got to make it ours. Maybe even into the sense of we just have to make it so people here will watch it. And I really don't feel like you have to do that. I really don't feel like you have to do that. And this comes just from somebody with horror film. A lot of foreign film I watch in horror that we remake. I'm like, we should have just left that alone. We should just left that alone.
Very fair. Now, before we go on to Godzilla Raids Again, which is the second film in the series, I want like to sort of cover a review or anything that you'd really like to talk about with Godzilla, and I want to kind of open this up to a little conversation. Sturdy, let's start with you. For you watching this film, and what were some of your takeaways and things that you liked or didn't like?
Honestly, I would have to say like it's something that I did wish I got into younger, just because there's so much, which I do plan on being here for this long ride. I plan on it, but stuff does happen, people. But no,
Life.
just so I can know the history of it. Just really so I can know the history of it, and I'm happy I get the opportunity to now. So like with this one, I'm just, again, I think the biggest thing I pulled from it is like it's not all about it's yes, it's a Godzilla film, but it's not all about Godzilla. And you learn that from the very first movie, from the original movie. And I say that because I know down the road there's gonna be times, man, where you're gonna have to remind me, like, Sturdy, the first episode you said this is not just all about Godzilla. And now episode 7, you're mad because it's not just all about Godzilla, talking about the where's Godzilla at.
Well, so that's the funny
episode with that it's not about Godzilla. No matter what I say later on in the episodes, it's not about Godzilla. And that's really important. Seriously, it's really important to know, because if you're going in here thinking like, oh my God, it's a Godzilla film, Godzilla's gonna be doing all this cool stuff. Yes and no. It's gonna be like a handful of coolness, and then it's about the people again. But it's good to know, it's good to learn that, because again, I've seen bits and pieces of Godzilla films, and then I seen it wasn't about Godzilla, and I got mad. So now, as I know, it starts with the original. Maybe things will change down the road. We will see, but who knows? But I'm so excited to be a part of this journey, and
we're excited to have you, man. Especially to add that horror element, because let's face facts. As dramatic as this movie is, and a lot of them do hold some really good drama. There's some great storytelling in the Godzilla films, and I think, in my opinion, that's what kept the longevity, is that it had an adaptability to its time. Even when you get into the Godzilla fighting every monster because aliens are controlling them, and
Monster Zero.
I don't love them, but even Destroy All Monsters is sort of an alien. So like, an Island Girls from Author, and so like, the thing is, like, it doesn't take it away from me. It doesn't take anything away. Like when I watch that, and I'm like, this is silly. This shouldn't be what Godzilla is. In fact, I think this is like what the Transformers movies are missing, is like more of the heart of it. This is more of a movie about what Japan and its history is than it is about Godzilla. This entire series, and I love that, because to say it from my feeling, and knowing that like 70, I think not 75, I think it was like 55% of the population of Japan as of like 15 years ago was born after 1945.
Wow.
So really, we watched this beautiful country evolve with these movies, and essentially like the look, the feel, the tone, the change of all of these movies. And now to even see where they're going, the Americanized legendary pictures, and like Godzilla -1, and even Shin Godzilla, which came out in 2016, and the animes, which we will all get to. It's all going to be covered.
The original Marvel graphic novel is being released as an omnibus. Yay!
I mean, there you go. Like, there's so much that I think that's the fun part about me. A lot of people are like, Godzilla's this eighth wonder of the world type person in pop culture, and that's true. But when you watch these films, you are watching the evolution of Japan since the bombs.
That's one of the things I want to talk about.
Please.
I hope that me being a part of this, if nothing else, will allow viewers and listeners to understand that the Godzilla 1954 is cinema. It is pure effing kino. Now, where to start with that? Let's start with Inoshiro Honda. Inoshiro Honda was a very well-respected assistant director. His best friend was Akira Kurosawa. He actually wrote and was the assistant director on Kurosawa's last 5 films. Inoshiro Honda was a very respected person among the elite in Japanese cinema. But outside of Japan, he still is known as, well, that guy that made, like, guys in, like, monster suits. No, he was highly respected. Also, Godzilla 1954 works because it is an amazing collaboration. And a few names that will come up through this entire series. Akira Ifube, who was the composer. He actually was a legitimate composer in Japan and came late to writing film music. And then you have Eiji Soboraya, who developed the concept of suitmation, but he was one of those kids that was obsessed with 1933 King Kong, to the point that, it took about 20 years for those kids to grow up and go, we want to do this as a living. He also was a cinematographer. He did a great deal of work with storyboarding, but literally he created almost from scratch all the special effects used in Godzilla. Now, it wasn't the first time suitmation was used. There were two 1930s King Kong ripoffs, but you have him. And then the last one I'll bring up is Takashi Shimura, who plays Dr. Yamane. He was the old man in I can't think of the name for it right now. The Kurosawa film about the older gentleman that reviews his life. He was in the Seven Samurai. A lot of the people who were connected to Godzilla 1954 were connected to Seven Samurai, which came out the same year. So my point is, it is beautiful because it's an immense collaboration of talent.
And honestly, it's funny because we're going to go into Godzilla Raids Again, and I'm glad you said that, because I would argue for Godzilla Raids Again, even though Honda couldn't come back for it because he was filming another movie at the time, so they had to bring in a new director. Actually, let me just read my read my facts as we get into it, because I have them. So Godzilla Raids Again is from 1955. It was released April 24th, 1955. Months after the first, it was rushed into production because of the success of the first film. It was directed by Motoyoshi Oda. Like I said, because the film was rushed, Honda was not available. He was filming on the movie. Introduction of and I'm going to ruin this. Anguirus.
It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference.
Fair.
Truly. And it's like Godzilla or Gojira. I mean,
yeah.
It doesn't mean crap.
Fair.
Seriously.
And the concept of fighting monsters is really introduced in this within the Godzilla world. Not saying that doesn't exist anywhere else. And it was re-edited and dubbed as an American version called Gigantus the Fire Monster. So that's my facts. That's what I'm sticking with. I would argue, to your point about the first Godzilla with Godzilla Raids Again, there is a good story there. So I would say it's cinema, but the introduction of the fighting monsters, which I think was pretty well done in this one for black and white and just being the second film, was done well. But it does this one was really where the idea of kaiju movies was birthed, right? You had Rodan, Mothra, Follow, and all those.
Well, at least for me, I'm just going to say it. A lot of people like to down like Godzilla versus Hedorah or things like this. As far as the Godzilla canon, the turd in the canon is Raids Again.
Okay.
It was a rush job. It was a rush job because, and this is another thing, Godzilla 54 was a humongous hit. So they rushed one through. Hiroshita Honda didn't want to do it. Eiji Tsuburaya didn't have the time to do it to his desire. And they even got another composer. Motoyoshi Oda is a very good director. He did some kind of science fiction films around that time. But for me, Raids Again is kind of a bummer.
Well, it is comparatively so. And I didn't want to get into too much of like how the ending happened until we get to the American version, but of the first film. But we can get it fully into Raids again here. What do you think of it, Sturdy? What are your feelings on it since watching this and watching the original and even the American version all together? I'd love to know what your perspective is watching this movie.
Honestly, with these movies too, what I'll say, and I've said this before with like other older black and white film, is they felt more like multiple episodes than they did films, than they did like multiple movies, which didn't bother me at all. So it almost felt like I was just binging Godzilla streaming somewhere, which didn't bother me. I enjoyed it. And again, just getting the experience of actually watching him, and again, going back to, it's not about Godzilla, but it is in some ways too. And like you were saying earlier, Trevor, with the whole sacrifice thing. I mean, with the first film, how the guy, when he creates this weapon, he's like, I gotta, yes, thank you. I gotta get, I have to sacrifice myself to save everybody else. That's huge. Like that's something to where it has to be one of the hardest things in the world to do, because everybody can sit here and say, I'm a hero, I would do it, this, that, and the third, until you're in that situation. Like I could sit here and say right here on the podcast, like, yes, I would do that. But if I'm in if I'm in the exact situation, and let's just use Godzilla, just because, we're talking Godzilla, and it's like, okay, you have to go down in the water. First of all, I don't like ships. I'm not going in an ocean. So there's that. But and the reason why I'm saying that though, like it's funny, but it's like that right there is a sacrifice. That right there, going in the ocean to go handle this, and then it's like, okay, I made this weapon, I got to destroy this weapon, and hopefully destroy Godzilla with it, and it's going to take me with it. Like I have to. That's huge. Like that is huge. And then to just do it. Like again, can you really do it? Can you really do it? I can say it. Yeah, I'll do it. I'm put me in. Like, no, don't put me in. Don't put me in that situation.
Before we jump further into Raids Again, which actually does have an element of sacrifice in it, based on the ending, because, it basically is a reference to the kamikaze.
Yeah.
Because they literally decide that they're going to sacrifice themselves for the good of Japan by flying into that iceberg. So there is sacrifice, but it's not Serizawa's. Serizawa's sacrifice is very ethical. It's very humane. It's very leftist. And it's not just by chance, but Serizawa and Oppenheimer are allegories together. Now, Oppenheimer did commit career suicide when he finally said, when there was no need for the Manhattan Project, he was like, I don't want to be making weapons. Well, he was blacklisted then. He made that sacrifice. Serizawa created the oxygen destroyer, but knew that it would be used as a weapon. And it's a sacrifice on an ethical, humane level, but it's also a sacrifice to the girl he loves.
Yeah.
Because he will sacrifice not just his longing to be with her, but whatever future she has with the other guy. I mean, the first one is like deep allegory. Raids Again is up there with a lot of 1950s static big monster movies. And, one thing that did bother me is because it's not Subaraya doing the effects, it always bothered me. It looked like Anguillas and Godzilla were like doing this like weird slam dance and had severe ADHD. Yeah. I had trouble with that. So
a lot of the fighting, it evolves in such a great way too, and it's so funny to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it in perfect representation. Actually, no, it's not a perfect representation because we could see it. It wasn't all dark. That was the difference between the first two movies too, and the cinematography. Even like you do feel like I'm not defending Raids Again as like this, great Godzilla film. In fact, this one was a first watch for me. So to watch it, loving the first one as much as I do, I was like, the only thing I was trying to look for was like the good in it. Where's it come from? I don't love the creature feature angle they took. I do love the allegory to what the kamikazes were. And I think that's why I really like those first two, is because a lot of those first two was saying, this is what Japan was. This is our belief system, the things that we've done, and we hold true to them. We hold true to who we were. And sacrifice is important, but we're also trying to grow and become something new.
And also you have to look at the fact that, Okay, I want to talk negative about Raids Again, but I have to point out
Mhm.
one thing that is quite amazing. It is a functional B movie at the time that was rushed within 1 year, that basically all that collaborative magic gave it the finger, so they hired other people. So with that, it's pretty damn impressive.
True. That's true. I mean, I'll give you that, and I'm not gonna jump on that. But what do you say to that, Sturdy? How do you with Raids Again and the original, and then like you see what comes directly after it with the Americanization? Do you think that this was a turn that helped going forward, or kind of was just one that was sort of like, all right, you guys just didn't do it right?
Honestly, I feel like I got to see more. Just based off these 3 films, I don't know. And again, you guys know way more about this franchise than I do. I don't know enough about it to really give it that good of an answer. But I'd have to see more. But I do see that no matter how good or how bad franchises are, there's weak points in everything. There's weak points in
Exactly.
everything. It's not just the horror films, people. It's every franchise. If you have more than, I'll say, like
It's
4
that
movies.
second film in a trilogy. Yeah.
Oh,
Hey, Empire.
Oh, well, you broke it. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
No, but yeah, and I see your point there, and I'd love to, as we go on, and the more that you do watch, even if you don't watch all in order, I would love to hear. I would love to go back and revisit your take on that and see, sort of, when you go back, because I feel like the first one just stands test time to what Trevor was saying too. The idea that this is cinema. This isn't, and I would actually hard argue that the very last film that came out is also considered cinema, and everything else in between is sort of fun monster movie
Okay.
with some great story to it. Don't get me wrong. In fact, I would elevate it a little bit above. But so when you're coming back to Raids Again, that was the last time, in my opinion, during the Showa era, and I don't want to get too deep into why, but like where you really do see the humanity side of the story. Even, and the reason I say that is because when you get into King Kong versus Godzilla, or 300 Ghidorah 300 monsters, stuff like that, there's humanity there, there's a story, there's an allegory, especially towards usually taking care of the earth, basically, like stop screwing around, stop messing up with this stuff. But these two were the two for a long time that were like, this is war-torn Japan coming back from, and it was such a drastic change. That's why I think I still have like a respect for Godzilla Raids Again.
Well, you'd mentioned about, it being different, having more of a humane quality. One has to remember, I'm going to take it back to 54 again. 2 years prior to 54, the United States had taken the reins of censorship, and the films could not mention anything about the war. They could not mention anything that made them in any way you sympathized with them, anything negative about the United States. That was all verboten. 2 years, 1952, that did change, and you had, more films like Hiroshima and Burmese Harp era kind of thing, but those were art films. And, one of the amazing things is this is a message film that was made for entertainment, and that makes it special. And that's what, Raids Again continues to a level with that, but that's an important thing to understand. They were, it's not a mistake that the Godzilla series begins as an allegory against human nature, H-bomb, the whole Lucky Dragon situation, which was connected to radiation. They finally were able to make cinema the way they wanted to. So, sorry, I just had to implement that.
No, I love that. I love that. And all right, so before we go on to talk about Godzilla King of the Monsters, let's go around and just kind of talk about Godzilla Raids Again. Sort of like a quick review. Sturdy, I want to start with you. What's your takeaways from it, and what's your review of it? Is it something you would revisit again?
Probably. I know I wouldn't revisit it again. But I am glad I watched it, and I'd probably say for all 3 of them, I probably won't revisit either one of these again. Not that they were, and I enjoyed them. Especially the 54 one. I enjoyed that one the most. But there's just so much more I want to see. with these films, you know, and it's just like I can't keep. I have too many films right now in my, I guess, my go back to list that I don't need to be adding anymore. And it's like those
I
nostalgic.
concur.
It's more
Fair.
so like I feel like for me, I keep my go back to list for that nostalgic feel. Like in a weird way, I almost feel it's like you're a fear of losing it if you don't go back and watch those movies at least once every 10 years for some.
Mhm.
You almost feel like you're gonna lose that, which you're not gonna lose it because you're never gonna lose the memory. But you know what I mean.
Mhm.
But
Well,
no, the
Godzilla 54 is very different in 10-year intervals. It's like the big chill. You
okay,
pick up so much more stuff every 10 years you see it.
Yeah,
that's
that's
fair.
one I could see
That's fair.
shining through over time. You know, like
Mhm.
maybe because we were talking about this the other day, Sturdy and I. Like this is going to be a final rewatch. Make sure I get everything in, and then
Mhm.
and I'm doing that with a lot of different things. So like for Godzilla, when you know, I want to do it where if it's on, they have a channel on Pluto. If something's on, I can put it on and watch it if I want to watch it. But I don't feel like I have to watch any certain movies anymore. It's not like that.
Mhm.
I just want it to be entertainment. So I'm with you on that. And I think that would be the same situation
Yeah.
for me. But
Mhm.
Trevor, how about you? What about you?
I mean, I've seen it a few times. I really don't need to see it many more times because I think it's honestly kind of a boring film.
Fair.
Um, it's also important to understand that it did not do as well as Godzilla for obvious reasons. And it wasn't until Inoshiro Honda did Rodan and followed it with Mothra that he was able to get the right funding to finally start making Godzilla films again.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Raids Again didn't tank, but it underperformed. And I think for an obvious reason. It's an adequate film, but nothing special. So, unless I have to for something, that's the one I can forget about.
Yeah. And it's actually funny you mentioned that because because the very next film in the series, in the Japanese series, would be King Kong versus Godzilla, which adds a very important American element to it. We're going to get into that in the next episode, but it is funny how you mentioned like this one almost kind of killed the kaiju idea
Mhm.
until they introduced new ones that ultimately wrap up into Godzilla because you can't kill the king. Let's face facts.
Exactly.
And I'm so glad that you're right. Godzilla Raids Again. It's not one I don't think I'd ever have to watch again. The first one I would probably revisit, but also King of Monsters, which we're going to get into, which I will start with my facts. So Godzilla King of the Monsters, 1956. It was released on April 27th, 1956 in the US. 1 year and 3 days after Toho released Godzilla Raids Again. The title was changed for American audiences to include the word monster because they feared they would not know what Godzilla was. Heavily re-edited Americanization with Raymond Burr in the lead, playing an American reporter who is following the story of Godzilla's attack in Japan. He also becomes the main focus of the story. Terry O'Morse is credited as a co-director, having filmed the added American scenes and having the original story and having changed the original story in certain elements. Produced by Jewel Enterprises. That is Godzilla King of the Monsters. So so not to confuse everybody, there are two movies called Godzilla King of the Monsters. Ironically, they're both American versions. The one that came out, I think in 2017, 2018, which we will cover, is not this one. This is a very different one. So this is essentially, like we said, it's the same story. Well, it's the same footage, which was bought up by America and this company, and they re-edited it and put this out. So I am not, after seeing the original in high school, I have a tough time watching this version. It changes too much. It takes the humanity out of it, in my opinion. In my opinion, it's colonialization of Godzilla. And it's not the first or last time this is going to happen. And especially, and we are going to cover a couple of those, but what do you guys think of this movie? Falls flat for me on almost all cylinders. What do you guys think of it?
Just like I was saying earlier with it, it just America'd it up, and I hate when they do that because you're taking away from this culture, you're taking away from the awesomeness of the original. To where, yes, I can see why I can even see putting it King of the Monsters and just throwing it over here with subtitles, changing nothing, or even dubbing it, but changing nothing. Don't Americanize it. Have the same exact story. Dubbing it if you feel like it's gonna help people watch it more. Call it King of the Monsters if you think it's gonna help people watch it more. Subtitles, whatever the case may be. But this here was unnecessary. It just felt like, okay, let's just make this ours now. Let's just, they did all the work. They did all the work. They did all the research. They did everything, and let's just and I didn't really care for it. I didn't really care for it.
Yeah. Trevor, I want to hear what you had to say about it. Especially if you have any insights you want to add too. I would love
Well,
to hear.
I have to be the dissenter because
Oh.
I think actually Godzilla King of the Monsters, one of its major faults is it used King of the Monsters, because if it had just used Godzilla, the fact that you're viewing all this stuff through an American reporter's eyes is that much more frightening. Now the title itself, it had to say monster to get it. But no, this is okay, number one, Raymond Burr. Raymond Burr is excellent in the film. Burr was quite a big star at the time. He was best known for his noir films. And the director, Terry Morse, really put a lot of thought into this. He had done a few science fiction films, but he also came from the noir background. And that makes a very big imprint on Godzilla King of the Monsters, because one of the unusual things about the film is it starts at the end and then goes forth, very much like a noir film. I think that honestly, it was the best possible thing that could be done. Now, there are a whole bunch of people connected, but the one that is there's two. The one I think is most important is Joseph E. Levine, and that should be a name it sounds, pretty familiar to people. He was the producer of Lion and Winter, the producer of The Graduate, etc., etc., etc. But he made a lot of his money buying foreign films, such as The Bicycle Thief, Rome Open City, Paisan, and dubbing them. And where Rosamond made about like $1 million when it was released, Levine's foreign films were bringing in 5-10 times that much. And Levine loved Godzilla. And at this time, like nowadays, you guys are film fanatics like me, and we look in the back and we're like, it's got subtitles, good. When most of us, when we're really, really tired, we go, let's just put the dubbing on. But dubbing was actually, at the time, considered a very good thing. It was flattering. It meant your film was important enough that we're going to make sure audiences are not intimidated by it. So, a funny little thing about it is after King of the Monsters, which did gangbusters, it was a huge hit in the United States. It was sold back to Japan, in which they subtitled Raymond Burr and then just left the Japanese dialogue in, which made no sense at all, because that was one of the big issues. A lot of the Japanese that's spoken in King of the Monsters, it doesn't add up with what's going on. But that they redubbed it, basically. But I have a very soft spot for this movie.
All right. You know what? I actually, with that explanation, it kind of made me like it a little bit more. That's weird. Like, there are some things too, though, and to what you're saying, Sturdy, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinion on this, because I think this is a great film to kind of talk about it. This topic, when America, they do call it Americanization of a film. When you have that Americanization from a foreign film into America, we've seen plenty of terrible, come from it. Dragon Ball, to name one, but
numerous Asian horror films. You back me up, Sturdy?
Oh, just Japanese horror films.
Just Japanese alone.
Yeah, I mean, we if we stay out of other countries for now, we're probably doing America a favor, because there's so many atrocities to horror. So when you come to Godzilla and they do this, now we've also seen them do this 4 times. Well, technically 5, if you count King Kong versus Godzilla. There are 2 endings. So, but really, you get Return of Godzilla was remade into 1985, and I can't wait to talk about that with you. And Trevor, I know you're going to be on that one too. And then, of course, they did the 1998 where they tried to do it on their own. That'll be an interesting episode, I'm sure. And right now we're seeing the Legendary, which I personally think is a fantastic story rendition of Godzilla and King Kong and the other monsters.
Well, I think I have to agree with you. And, I think it works because right now the sequel is passe.
Mhm.
Right now, the blockbuster has to be within a universe. And that's really cool because it opens up the creative juices like crazy for blockbusters. They're still not great. Make sure you know that. But
Oh, yeah.
sequels get really dry after a while because they just want to keep making the same thing again and again. So that's why I think the legendary Godzilla movies are really awesome.
Actually, and to even kind of argue furthermore, and to compare the two, the original and Sturdy, I want to hear what you think about this because I think you've seen a couple of the new ones
Excuse me.
that have come
Not
out.
not all the way through. More so, like if the wife's watching, I'll go downstairs and kind
Nice.
of just pick up with her wherever she's watching.
Well, and I
Mhm.
can't wait for you to rewatch these. So, I'm excited because again, especially with the TV show being added, they're adding this whole element. But I think it frees up Toho to tell these individual Godzilla stories. And Shin Godzilla, for many reasons we'll get into, has faults that I don't know are all faults, but and then you have Godzilla -1, which I think was such a perfection on the original in that direction. I don't think it would exist unless you took the Godzilla we're seeing, the Americanization right now, when the legendary pictures. And that's what I love about Godzilla. You can have these, like you can't even have you can't even have a multiverse in Marvel right now that are everybody getting upset, or DC. But we're cool with it. Like in Godzilla, it's like yes, because all we're getting is good. You know, even the bad is good.
Oh,
You know?
it's like an addictive candy for us. I mean, I know you, Mick, are very much like me. We were bitten by the Godzilla bug at a very, very early age. And Godzilla is comfort food to us.
There is something about it, and that, you know, as having this discussion because I have another podcast about Star Trek, and I was talking to my son. He's my co-host, and he was watching some of the Godzilla with me because he loves them, but we're also watching Star Trek, and he goes, in the 60s right now where we are, he's like, it's so odd, it's so weird. He goes there, and he pointed out something to me. There's such a hopeful tone in all of the Godzilla films and in Star Trek, and he goes, that I don't feel like I see in movies today. Especially movies like that, like we've lost, like the 60s did. And I'm gonna be doing a panel soon about how the 60s to the 70s changed, of course, in tone. Where after we went, and it's it's actually, for me, it's like after we went to the moon, we lost all hope. And I've written on it in college, but I want to do it now that I do this. I want to do a more in-depth version. So, but the reason
That'll be fascinating.
Yeah,
I'd
I
enjoy
would
that.
love to talk to you guys about it if you're interested. We can talk
Yeah.
about it. But so as we go on and we see this movie, it comes out. It also has another iteration that came out in 1977.
Oh, this is a good one.
I was thinking about making this its own, and I want to get in depth with it in the chronological sense, but I'd like you to give sort of an introduction to Godzilla, if you can, and kind of talk about that and how it kind of fits the framework of the first movie and the American movie.
Well, the 1977 Godzilla King of the Monsters basically pulls most of it's pretty much, it pulls from the Raymond Burr version. It was directed and conceived by a gentleman who loves film but is one of the worst filmmakers ever made, Luigi Cozzi. Brought us such wonderful films as Contamination and Star Crash, not to mention the two Hercules movies. Well, basically what he did is he felt that he bought up the rights, which he really didn't. He colorized it and dubbed it into Italian, and it was only out for a short amount of time for two reasons: because it was breaking amazing amounts of copyright law, and it just sucked. I mean, it is considered one of those lost Italian horror films, and probably one of the most embarrassing things. And he did a lot of embarrassing things, trust me, Luigi Cozzi ever did, and it's just an oddity. So the Italian Godzilla is very hard to find. It's kind of up there with Abby as far as movies that, actually it's easier to find Abby now than it is to find the 77 Godzilla.
It's funny you mentioned that because you told me about it. I didn't know about this. And you told me about it, and I was like, all right, we're going to talk about this because it's part of Godzilla. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. I had to turn it off because it hurt my eyes.
Oh, so bad. And you have to think, I mean, Cozy Did a lot of assistant director work with people like Argento and Bruno Mattei, and well, that sucks to begin with. But so when he did something, his friends supported him. Unfortunately, they supported him a little too much. The only thing he's ever actually done well is he manages the Profondo Rosso Dario Argento shop in Italy. He's a darn good
Oh, okay. I've heard
manager.
about that shop
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, he is a darn good manager of that and a horrible filmmaker.
Well, if I go to Italy and go to, which I would absolutely love to see that shop.
Mhm.
I can't wait.
Oh, and Sturdy, real quick. Contamination, I say bad things about, but is one of the weirdest of the Alien ripoffs. So I will recommend Cozy's Contamination.
I will recommend it as well. I actually really enjoy that film. And I was very fortunate last year at Carolina Fear Fest to get to sit down for a panel and talk to Ian McCulloch. And
Oh, lovely human being.
yeah, wonderful guy. I went in thinking like this dude's not going to want to talk to me. Like I just like I don't know what it was. It was a preconceived notion. We sat down. And he was one of the most wonderful human beings. But I told him I like Contamination. He made fun of me for it, which I thought was great. But I do maintain
He and Fulci even got along. And
Yeah, he
Fulci
said
did
that
not
too.
get along well. Yeah.
so,
You know,
so funny.
he actually got along less with his male leads than he actually got along pretty well with female. It was, if you were talented, he liked you. So, but Ian McCulloch is a legend.
It would be so amazing to see, maybe not him do it, but like if there was an Italian remake of Godzilla and Ian McCulloch in it in the 70s. I'm thinking about like he would be a good Raymond Burr type of character, Steve Martin character.
I was thinking more of the
more
fact
believable.
that if it was made, you'd have all those sequences from Shin that were so gory actually included. But that's a whole other story.
Well, originally I was going to ask to kind of, as we kind of wind it down and with everything, if they remade this today, what do you think it should work? In an American version, if they remade that version today, how would it work? And we can still ask that because if you remade the Japanese version, we got that this past December and it was amazing.
Yeah.
Brilliant. But if we remade an American version of Godzilla like this version, do you think that it would hold up? Do you think it would be a good remake, or do you think we need what we have now?
I think you would honestly have to change a lot of the major themes. I would think that you would find yourself going to some mid-Showa Godzillas, and it would pull more inspiration and theme from ecological nightmares. So that's my take on it.
All right. And Story, how about you, man?
I'm not sure. Just because of what I heard from the -1 movie, how amazing it's been from you and a bunch of others.
Oh, it's good. It's yummy.
I mean,
another.
It's
Like
-1 renders this question moot because it's like you can't. Like they remade the very first one and it's 1,000 times better, and I still love that first one. So it's
it's Toho in a very nice way, giving the middle finger to the legendary films by saying, "Guess what? We still got this shit."
Yeah,
there you go.
You can edit that out if you want, but you know.
No, I'm leaving that in. I don't care.
I listen. No. But when you edit it, here's why you should edit it. The middle finger should be Godzilla. The middle finger should be Godzilla.
There you go.
All right. It all fits with the theme.
Yeah, there you go.
I've absolutely
take this, legendary.
I've loved the conversation, and I'm so excited to see where we're going to go with this. So, guys, on the next episode, we will be covering the next 3 films in the series. We're going to be covering Godzilla versus King Kong versus Godzilla. You can watch 2 versions of that. We're not going to watch both. We're going to know there are 2 versions. The American version has King Kong win, and the Japanese version has Godzilla win, which is the more preferable in my opinion. And then that's from 1963. 1964 is Mothra versus Godzilla. Fantastic film. And then, of course, we're going to follow that up with 1964's Ghidorah, the 3-headed monster. Super excited for this. Those next 3 are going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, it's going to be a great time. I'm super excited. I've finished them already. Got my notes. So excited. And I know you guys are excited too. So
yes,
that'll be coming out next week. Make sure to check that out. Now, guys, before we go, Sir Sturdy, tell us a little bit about yourselves, your shows, and where can we find you?
I guess I'll start out with Popcorn and Pints because I'm wearing the shirt, and because we're also going through right now. Mick was over there with us, which I'd love. If you're a Star Wars / Star Trek fan, would love to have your insight on some of this because you, my
cool.
friend, are amazing. But
No,
we're
I'm
going.
not.
We're going through the.
He's
No,
so
listen,
I
modest.
know a
He's
lot of
so
useless
modest.
shit. You know it.
listen, it's not useless because we're having an awesome conversation about it.
Go back and watch old episodes of the showcase, and you will see we have great conversations.
Oh hell yeah! But anyways, we're doing the franchises of Star Trek and Star Wars, just the movies, like a versus type of thing over on Popcorn and Pints, which we just started last night. And it's again, I know Star Trek and Star Wars way more than Godzilla, but I'm still like an infant when it comes to it. So I don't want to sit here and act like I'm still learning a ton. But it's so exciting to be like three huge franchises that are important in movie history, really important in movie history, and I'm learning them all like damn near around the same time. It's like.
And it's funny because seeing Trevor now in the Godzilla element and having everything around him, that was sort of me last night with the Star Trek and Star Wars element, because I'm like, and now if you bring us both on, I swear to you, you guys aren't going to talk. We're just going to be having some fun.
I want to, but the thing is, I want people to come on and have these conversations about these type of over there at Popcorn and Pints with these films that love them, that know about them, and some that may not, just like myself, or doesn't know much about them, to learn through them, and you get the opportunity. Hey, you either love it or you hate it, but at least you went through it. And I feel like with podcasting, for me, it's the easiest way to go through these type of films, or else I'm just not gonna do it. I'm probably gonna lie to you guys, I'm just not, because it's just so much to watch. It's so much to watch. Like, it's like I have to watch it to talk about it, so I might as well,
And it's funny that Popcorn and Pints is where you do that with your more mainstream movies, because we are talking about Godzilla, and I will argue that Godzilla is horror all the way, no matter what the campy thought. Even Son of Godzilla, these are monsters.
54 Godzilla is a horror film.
That is 100%.
It's a human horror film.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm just going to implement this real quick. And they don't talk about this very much. And they do in -1, and they do a little bit in 54. If you come in contact with Godzilla, if you're close to his atomic breath, you're probably going to die of cancer. I hate to tell you that, but yeah. It's a horror film.
He is he's the literal.
He is a bomb. He is the H-bomb.
Yeah. Truly amazing. So like with all that horror, I needed a horror guy to come on and talk to me and get me right. So please tell me about your other shows.
So I have another show called Horror Research 30 where we just discuss, review anything horror related. And before I used to do like, the Hollywood movies, whatever you want to call it, all that stuff. And then like B movies, indie movies, and all that. I still do it, but I separated them now. So now I have late nights with Search 30 where we do the B movies, the indie movies, all the weird stuff that you're gonna stay up and want to review. Of course, like, and again, I love focusing on that just because it's something that when I started doing it on my show, I'm like, these movies, man, these are ridiculous. They're wild, they're crazy. But I know it's not for everybody. And when I came up with this late night thing, one of my older cousins that actually was one of the people who was responsible for me watching horror at a 5-year-old is on that show with me as well. So that's awesome. My brother's on there, and a good friend of ours is on there with me, and then whoever wants to come on and be a guest, of course. But you stay up late. Back in the day, we would stay up late to watch the weird stuff. And that's what I want people to do now. I want people to think of late night with Search 30 as the weird stuff. You stay up late to watch the weird stuff, and you're gonna get that with there. And I got some things in the works I don't want to announce yet with that show, but I got some things behind the scenes that I'm working on to make it a little more interesting, a little more fun. But yeah, so check out Horror Research 30, check out Popcorn and Pints. Such a fun time, such a fun time. You can ask this gentleman over here, Mick.
I love doing it, and I'm a fan. And I want to put something in there. One thing that really attracted me to Sturdy Show a few years ago when I found it was the fact that he is watching and reviewing things that I don't see any other horror podcast really talking about. Now, I'm not saying that no other podcast has ever talked about that, but these are the movies when he spins his wheels, they're the ones that like you may see as you're going through and then never really give a chance unless you're really given a good recommendation. And that's what I like about that show. You're getting great recommendations for things you may not see or know about. And that is a big thing for me. And, to kind of correlate that. And I'm going to make sure that all of your stuff for both of you is down in the description. So make sure to follow and go check them out, their YouTube channels, everything. But to kind of correlate and transition over to you, Trevor, with Ambassador Radio. You are such a fountain of knowledge, and
no, I'm not.
I love your stuff.
Well, first of all, Meg, I am honored as always to be part of this podcast. Sturdy, it's amazing to finally meet you. and I look forward to talking about horror. And as Mick can attest, if you're looking for somebody who knows something about weird horror, I know a bit, just a little.
Okay,
A
listen.
little.
So, just a little. So,
I have a
but
crew that would love your knowledge of that, man. Mick's met them all, and he's just
okay.
oh man,
Well,
yes.
If you're up on the late
so
nights, go for it.
yeah. Excuse me. So, Ambassador Radio, you can find out information on that at ambassadorradio.org. It's also Ambassador Media. We're expanding into different content and things of that nature. But the core concept is a syndicated radio show, which you can hear online now, that looks at obscure, rare music. And to, just kind of give it a sound bite, it's looking at the B side of music history. And it's enough of the B side that the world of copyright doesn't seem to care about it. So that's sad, but also it helps. Because you'd mentioned, Sturdy, you'd mentioned, Mick, you both mentioned about the idea of giving recommendations and telling people about stuff. And, I'm always chasing the dragon. I'm always looking for something new and something different. But, at 47, right now, what gives me the most pleasure is to see somebody younger than me experience a movie that I really care about and their reaction, whether it's positive or negative. I think for me that is even more elating than finding something new.
Yeah, I love that, and that's such a major thing, and I appreciate you two so much for what you do and your love of movies, your knowledge, what you're bringing to all of this. Thank you guys for joining me on this journey. This is Hail to the King. This is the Godzilla 70-year retrospective miniseries we're doing. Thank you guys so much for joining in. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
It's going to be so much fun. Make sure you join in for next week because we're getting into some really fun ones. All right. Until next time, take care, everybody.
Adios.
Peace.